Hi, Najee. I'm Farber here. I want to welcome you to Conversations About Conversations. We just recorded your podcast, the No Job podcast, which, by the way, I love your podcast and I had a great experience on your podcast. Now, even though we're sitting in the same seats, we're on my podcast. So, Najee, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Very happy to be here.
Now, I want to use your podcast as an example of a conversation that I would say was a good conversation, but it's fairly typical of most conversations in that you came on, you're the host, and you asked me a series of questions. But what we didn't really do that we now get the chance to do now that we're getting a second chance is create something for the future. So what I want to do is take you through my model and think back to what we just did on your podcast. Sound good?
Sounds great.
And while I do it, I'm going to take you through the steps. So kind of be in character, out of character. Well, I don't know if I am a character. What I like to do is I like to create an agenda. So what I just did is the beginning of create. Said, we're going to create it. Look back at that. Are you on board with that? And you said, yes. As you're on my podcast, what I want to create here is just really the elevation of your game in conversations. Like that conversations is a game,
Right.
and we can all get better at it. I'm looking to learn something. So Najee, what I'm looking to learn from you is how you and I can collaborate. Like what results do us two guys with jobs who want to have no jobs, who want to work but don't want to have jobs necessarily, but we want to provide for our families. But like, what do we do? You're really motivated. You are motivational. You motivate me. What would you like to create in this conversation?
I would like to create a better relationship with you, more of a relationship with you, better than the admiring one another from afar that we've done so far, because you're someone who, when you heard my podcast, so easily connected to what we were doing, and the same on my end towards you. I think there's got to be some benefit in us having a better and closer relationship. Does that make sense?
Totally. So that's the first part of my model is create. We're creating something, right? Like we don't know what we're creating yet, but we're both open at this point to learning, right? Like I'm not just asking you a question about like, tell me about your story, tell me about your history. It's forward looking. Like we're looking at the future. What does the future hold for Najee and Ivan? So
Right.
that's the creating part. And we might need to recreate, but just in this conversation, we're creating. All right, and we're learning.
Mhm.
That leads to explore. So we began to explore inside of creating, like what that looks like. So let's explore it. How about that?
Yeah. So as far as our synergy is concerned, one thing that popped up to me about our conversation that we had on my podcast is when you said that conversations are the units of relationships, and I immediately had that word picture of bricks representing of conversations being bricks and the house being relationships. And I thought that idea was something we could do cool around. Again, I don't know what it would be, but the fact that I had a word picture for your concept that makes sense, I think was cool. So I'd like to I'd like to explore that more. Like, what would happen if you were always feeding me concepts? Would I be able to come up with good examples of them or good metaphors for them on a consistent basis? Maybe, maybe not, but that's something to explore.
Metaphors definitely make a difference in our conversations because they communicate at a really deep level. Now, I've never heard the brick by brick one. In my book, this is like very early in the book, I say a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. A relationship is only as strong as its weakest conversation. But
Right.
now I've got another metaphor, thanks to you,
Yeah.
of a house. You build a relationship as a house. And if you're using faulty bricks, you don't really have a solid house.
Yeah. Right. And just the fact that any one person's relationship to another person really is the sum total of all the conversations that they've had, or the average of all the conversations they've had. How you feel about that person when you see them has to be based on your communication with them in the past.
Najee, what does your ideal no job look like?
The ideal no job. So I'd like to be doing the podcast. That's a part of it. I'd want advertising on the podcast, advertising that I'm in alignment with, advertising for products and services that I actually use or would use if I was in the position of the person that I'm speaking to. So I see ads and partnerships of that nature as a form of revenue contributing to turning this into a full-time no job. I'd like to speak on the subject. So that goes from general infotainment to more specific steps. And I guess the last part would be coming up with a set of steps that I could talk about at any given time, and that the community, that would be part of the community's language. Are you familiar with Dave Ramsey? Okay, so you know how he has the 7 baby steps. Like, I'd want to have my version of the 7 baby steps, whether it's 7 or 5 or whatever, that shows someone how step by step you transition from having a job to having a no job, and really rally people around working that plan. And I think naturally all types of events and processes would evolve from that would be profitable.
So what's baby step one?
So baby step one, I think it would have to be, I think baby steps one and two would be very similar to Dave Ramsey's baby step one and two. So the first will be emergency savings, getting that together. So I so here it is. I think it'd be more broad now that I think about it more. Baby step one is getting your personal general finances in order. Because for 99.9% of us, the no job is going to incur much more risk than whatever job we have. That's just a fact. So whether it's step one or step one and 1A and 1B or steps one through three, it's about getting some kind of savings together. Um, what my wife and I do is 4 months worth of living expenses to just have in case anything's happened. In the case both of us lost our jobs, which God forbid would never happen, be prepared for the worst. Second is paying down your debt. And that's going to include like car notes, whatever. That $200, $300 a month is going to be really necessary for most of us when we're starting on a journey. So baby step one would have to do something with the finances to answer your question.
Okay. Now what's the next step?
Hmm. So I might have assumed when I said step one, I might have assumed that somebody identified something that could be a no job for them, but maybe something that could be worked concurrently with baby step one would be exploring your interests. And honestly, maybe that is step two, because you have to free up time and energy in order to explore your interests. And you're going to have to spend some disposable income to really get a feel for things you're interested in, to see how far that interest goes, whether it be something you'd go as far as to try to make a living from or not. So I think step two would have to do with exploring your interests in different ways. And some of those days would cost a little bit of money, nothing crazy, but you'd have to be willing to spend.
Now, where we're going is pretty exciting. This is pretty exciting stuff, Najee.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to just take an aside for a moment to tell you where we are in the conversation model,
Okay.
just to be clear, and we can come back to where we are. But so we created that we would create something together,
Mhm.
and we have been creating something together. We're exploring it, and then we're addressing it by getting into kind of the steps. So like we articulated the need. The need is to create something big and future oriented, but to break it down into like 7 baby steps,
Mhm.
right? That's the need. So then to resolve that, we started brainstorming on the baby steps. But that doesn't just need to be you and I, that could be books, lectures we go to. We could survey people on what they think the baby steps are. We can ask David DeSell. David, of course, on your episode 3, talked about his steps
Yeah.
and his willingness to like drive an Uber while he was being entrepreneurial.
Right.
So then the last part of the model is to resolve.
Mhm.
And it doesn't need to be the final resolution, but basically it could be you and I, Najee, saying, you know what? Let's give each other the homework
Mhm.
of writing 7 baby steps, and then we'll email each other what baby steps we came up with.
Mhm.
Right?
That's
Like we put some kind of action in the future and we agree upon it.
right.
That's the clear model.
Mhm. Right. Can you please just go down one by one each point of the clear model so we have it all uninterrupted?
Yeah, of course. And this can be on my podcast and yours. You create, and being clear in this clear model, you're clear about what you're looking to do. You and I we're looking to collaborate.
Hmm.
So we have agreement on what we're doing in the future. In other words, the conversation is future oriented. A lot of interviews and conversations are backward oriented. Like, how did you get into this? And how did you choose this career? Instead of, what do you want to do in your future? So number one, the process is agree on where we're going. Number two is learning. And you do that by exploring. And when you're exploring, you're looking to create a mutual understanding of the other person's needs. And it's a multifaceted peeling the layers of the onion, or as I like to say, peeling the pomegranate, because while an onion only has 10 or 11 layers, a pomegranate has about 600 plus seeds.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of needs that you can keep pulling out of the pomegranate. But you and I have a need to leave our jobs at some point
Mhm.
and know what the steps are. So we explored that, and we got agreement. So we first got agreement what we're looking to accomplish. Then we got agreement what our needs are.
Mhm.
Then we started to address that by brainstorming the baby steps, like just speculating, well, what are those baby steps? And then the final part of it is resolving. And in the word resolve, you have the word re and solve. And re isn't really a word, but anyway, to break it apart, you solve a problem. You resolve, you address a need.
Mhm.
So in life, there are problems, and to the degree that we make and choose a problem that's worthy of our lives, that's really inspiring.
Got it. Yes, I'm excited, and I really do want to do this baby steps thing with you via email. What should the deadline be?
What do you feel? What do you feel in your bones that we should do this by? I don't think we should wait very long.
Yeah, my first instinct said sooner than I naturally would put it. That was my first instinct. Let's do it by Tuesday, just in case anything happens. You know, let's do it Monday because Tuesday's extremely comfortable for me. So let's make it Monday.
Oh, you're on my show. Let's do it right now.
Okay.
Let me, may I, well, since we're on my version of your show, of my show, let me tell you what I think the 7 steps might be. I'm going to think on the fly and out loud.
Okay.
Number one, yeah, you have to get your financial house in order. Now, baby step two, I think you got there. It's what is your niche? For you, it's so clear. I love the picture of you with your cardboard, no job on it. Like, you have a community. All right. So what would be the next step? Step three. In the old days, it would be someone would get a business card with their ideas. You like order it at the stationery store. Now, of course, it's a .com. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I did when I realized Conversations University was something I wanted to do is I bought conversationsuniversity.com.
Mhm.
And in 15 minutes, I had a template website up, and it's up now, conversationsuniversity.com. I don't have a university. So if someone was really looking really closely, they might say, you're committing fraud. You don't have a university. Neither did Trump, and that didn't stop Trump. He still called it Trump University.
True.
So Najee, I would say this step three is throwing your hat over the wall in some way, shape, or form, that you're committing publicly.
Hmm.
Is that
Yes.
a fair step three?
Yes. Very, very fair.
Okay. Now I think step four is getting other people to give you advice and be on your board of advisors.
Hmm.
Step five has to be creating something people can buy and give you money. Step six is taking the money that you made and investing in the growth of your no job.
Hmm.
And I think it's come to me, Najee. I think baby step seven is what I'm going to call play full out.
Hmm.
Never give up, never surrender. There is no failure. There's only feedback, and just keep your legs moving.
Hmm. Wow, that was pretty good. That's extremely impressive, especially for on the spot. Like it sounds like it was already formed because it makes sense.
But you did it. And when I say you did it, you listened.
Mhm.
And that's what I mean about conversations being so powerful and creating something. It's because if I was just sitting here by myself, I wouldn't have come up with that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I came up with it in the conversation that we're having.
Mhm.
So Najee, I think that is a good stopping spot for this conversation. Is there any closing statement or statements that you'd like to make?
I just want to bring up an observation of mine, which is that I think that while I've asked people for help and I'll ask people for specific things, I don't think I do enough asking others for open-ended responses to my questions about what I can or should be doing next. So I may say, "Should I try this? Yes or no?" And they'll say, "Yeah, it worked for me," or "No, I didn't have any success with that." But never did I ask someone to put themselves in my shoes and with the wisdom that they have, how would you operate if you were me? And I feel like that's what happened in this conversation, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah, we're just beginning. This conversation that you and I are having is just the beginning.
Yeah, I believe that with absolute certainty. Seriously.
There are no accidents, and David DeSalle is a phenomenal connector of people and ideas. Najee, I want to thank you very much for joining me in this conversation about conversations.
Thanks for having me. Hope to do this again, sincerely.
Yeah, absolutely.